Our movie begins with Chelsea getting a video call from her closest friend Mia, who has been sending Dylan, a male she likes, graphic images. Mia considers giving Dylan's images to Chelsea out of concern that he could do her dirty by showing her photos to his buddies. Chelsea, however, refuses to participate and claims that she must go to school. Chelsea notices this and begs her mother to drive her to school so she won't be linked with her sister and her snobby, stuck-up acquaintances. Chelsea's mother urges her to get along with her sister, but she resists. When Christina discovers Chelsea is messaging an unidentified boy named Vic, she hangs up the phone and makes fun of her. Chelsea receives texts from Vic frequently while at school, but she doesn't respond. She observes Mia conversing with Dylan and Seth, and as they depart, Mia makes known that Dylan had invited them to his home for the evening. She is left with Seth in the living room as Mia leaves for Dylan. Chelsea has no choice but to respond to Vic after Dylan unexpectedly arrives and begins having relations with Mia. She learns that Mia only committed this act in order to use her as a cover for her visit to meet Dylan. Chelsea tells Mia that she left school the following day because of Seth's approach. Chelsea is upset by this and says Mia only cares for Dylan now. Mia walks away infuriated. Chelsea signs into her account and keeps talking to Brad. She babbles on about how miserable her life is and how there is no one to talk to. She should get to know Brad because he promises to listen to her. He refers to Chelsea's profile, in which she identified herself as a cheerleader. Chelsea sneaks into Christina's room and shoots photos while wearing her cheerleader outfit to maintain her false persona. Brad receives the pictures, after which she initiates a video conference with him. Brad accepts to go on a real-life date when Chelsea recommends it 3 weeks later after they get closer. Brad suggests that they continue with their plans and meet at a warehouse Halloween party where she may wear a zombie cheerleader costume and he will be a zombie quarterback. When Halloween rolls around, Chelsea informs her mother that she will simply stay at home and hand out candy to trick-or-treaters. But after everyone has left, Chelsea arrives at the location and runs into Brad, who has makeup on and is wearing a football helmet. In order to avoid being detected, he provides her with some booze and asks that she consume the entire bottle before they leave. Brad takes her to his car when she is intoxicated, binds her up, and places her in the backseat. He burns Chelsea's phone before leaving. Chelsea wakes up shortly after, trapped in a creepy cellar. Brad eventually shows up, gives her lunch, and releases her from the bindings. The following day, he returns to the basement and calls Chelsea Sadie. He slaps Chelsea when she corrects him and insists that Sadie is now Chelsea. Chelsea remains silent until Brad departs because she is too shocked to speak. Later, when a rat consumes her spilled meal, she finds solace in its presence. Chelsea sobs as the rat disappears since it was the one thing that helped her feel less lonely. Later, Brad pranks her with some water, and she downs it without hesitation. She expects him to feed her as well, but Brad first asks her for her name before providing any food. Chelsea responds in jest that she's Sadie. Brad throws the food in the ground because he doesn't like the way Chelsea is acting, but Chelsea still eats it. As Brad leaves, he notices rat droppings, and when Chelsea wakes up, the rodent has been caught in a rat trap. Her actual name is Megan, though. Brad commands Megan to free Chelsea from her chains, but when she tries to exit the basement, she can only get the windows and doors to stay closed. Chelsea is pinned to the wall as Megan finally catches up to her and warns her to behave or they'll get in trouble. Chelsea complies with instructions until she notices Brad upstairs in his office using a computer. Megan then takes Chelsea into another area where they encounter Heather, another cheerleader who introduces herself as Sadie. When Heather presses Chelsea for her real name, she answers firmly that it is Sadie, much to their satisfaction. Heather then departs to make Brad a cake. Megan then gives Chelsea the order to undress and groom herself. Megan tells her that her hair needs to be bleached in Brad's preferred manner after cleaning her up. After having her hair colored, Chelsea hears wailing and discovers Tina hurt in the room next to her, for getting her hair bleached and hearing weeping across from hers. When Chelsea attempts to assist her, she abruptly accuses her of betraying her. Brad leaves his workplace in the meanwhile with a splitting headache. He remembered the genuine Sadie showing him her body and laughing at him. He enters the kitchen and discovers Heather preparing a cake after waking up. He approaches her from behind and starts to touch her before asking if it is what she wants. He beats Heather's head on the table when she is forced to say yes. Heather visits Chelsea's room shortly after, her cheek now bruised. Chelsea worries about how Tina needs a doctor as she assists her with dinner preparation. Heather, though, is adamant that Brad wouldn't take her to the hospital. They must thus care for her medical needs alone. Chelsea is incensed and queries if they've ever attempted to escape, but Heather cautions her that she has already witnessed what would occur if they do. Rather, Heather assists Chelsea with applying cosmetics. He assures her that they will be able to spend outdoor time together. True enough, Brad gives Chelsea permission to spend time outside, but only after she used a VR helmet to give herself the impression that she was outside. After that, Brad instructs them to go to supper and terminates their time spent outside. Heather mutters before they move. Tina only gets to eat the leftovers, so Chelsea should set some food aside for her. Chelsea almost receives retribution when she starts eating without Brad. Chelsea sobs because of the stress and says that she misses her mother. Brad responds by telling her that her father was brought home early by the army to assist in the search for her. Chelsea is then praised for at last receiving more attention than Christina. Chelsea starts to cry when she hears this, but Brad becomes irritated and demands she stop. Chelsea discovers Heather packing her stuff after supper. She claims to have been restrained. She's been Brad's prisoner for 3 years, but now that he believes she's perfect, she can leave. Brad unexpectedly shows up to take Heather up and informs her that it is time for her last performance. Following this, Chelsea feeds Tina and at last remembers her as the missing girl from the news. Brad has another headache as he gets ready for Heather's last performance below. He is reminded of Sadie's birth through this, and his mother made his little sister the priority over him right away. In light of this, his mother spanked him and told him to go down to the basement after he claimed he wished she had never been born. When Brad does return to reality, he informs Heather that this will be her last performance. Quite different, he assures her that if she completes it, he will release her. Brad dons the VR helmet he constructed while Heather gets warmed up as they approach the basement. When he instructs Heather to begin a cheer dance. When she sees Brad wielding a knife, she halts. She attempts to get away because she is terrified, but he cuts her in the arm. Brad agreed with Heather's claim that he believes she was ideal, but that's also the reason his mother has always detested him. Heather yells at him as a result. She is not his sister, he claims. However, Brad stabs her in the stomach out of rage. Heather makes an effort to fight back, but Brad is stronger than her. She attempts to flee once more. However, Brad confronts her and stabs her once again, accusing her of always attempting to harm him. Finally, he slits her throat and declares that he will repeatedly see her demise. Brad then discovers Chelsea sleeping when he enters her room. He reaches out to touch her body, but cannot muster the courage to touch her. Instead, he sobs and rests his head on Chelsea's breast. Awakening her, he hovers over Chelsea as she freezes in dread, but he then hears Sadie's voice in his mind, so he walks away. Chelsea shakes with fear and covers herself with the blanket. The next day, Megan communicates with Chelsea by means of a gap in the wall separating their rooms. Megan warns Chelsea to stay away, at which point Chelsea recognizes she has Stockholm Syndrome from Brad as she owns him. She still loves Brad despite the fact that he sometimes hits her. Chelsea intentionally consumes all of the ketchup during breakfast. This enraged Brad, and is instructed not to consume her meal. Megan laughs at this, but Brad finds it annoying. He thus punishes them both by denying them access to any outside time throughout the day. Later, after speaking with Tina, Chelsea learns that Brad caused her to get pregnant. She attempted because of this. Brad seized her as she attempted to flee. He stabbed her in the leg and battered her, which led to her miscarrying. Tina then begs Chelsea to assist her in taking an overdose to death. She declines, and instead replaces the girl's bandages. Chelsea, however, notices that Tina's injury is infected. Tina becomes completely unable to survive. Finally, Chelsea promises to assist her in return for knowledge of a way out. Later on that day, while cleaning the living room, Chelsea discovers a photograph of the actual Sadie. Brad, however, takes it out of her hands and tells her never to touch it again. Chelsea then returns to her bedroom. Tina calls her out of the blue and says that while Brad was cutting the grass in the backyard, she needed to fetch the medication off of his nightstand. Tina demonstrates to Chelsea how to unlock their locked doors. When she is successful, she leaves right away and goes to Brad's room. Chelsea discovers the drugs and Heather's jewelry there. She suddenly recalls sweeping the carpet to get rid of her tracks. Chelsea eventually makes it to Tina's room but pauses to head to Brad's office to get assistance. A website. This is pointless since she needs a password to pass through. Chelsea swiftly exits the room and makes an attempt to enter while wiping her footsteps from the carpet. Brad comes in via the front entrance after finishing the lawn mowing in the interim. Chelsea accidentally went upstairs. She hurriedly picks up the pills when she spills them on the ground and goes back to Tina's room. Chelsea hides behind the door as Brad opens it after hearing her lock it again. Their common restroom. When Tina sees him, she starts to freak out, so he becomes angry and tries to murder her. Brad chokes Chelsea even though she begs him to stop as she enters the room. When Chelsea notices Tina sobbing, she begs Brad to let her kill the girl. Brad is startled. However, he concedes that it will be entertaining to see. When Chelsea gets close, Tina expresses her gratitude that Brad won't be the one to murder her. That's all. Chelsea suffocates the girl to death by placing a pillow over her face. Brad is astounded by Chelsea, who is frightened by what she did, hears this right away and is quickly consoled. Brad trusts Chelsea enough to show her his work after realizing that they have similar thought processes. Chelsea is brought into his office where he shows her Heather's death footage. She is appalled by it but pretends to be delighted to win Brad over. She suggests beating Megan to death when Brad asks her how he should murder the woman. He finds the notion fascinating and is eager to act, which causes Chelsea to become alarmed. She seduces Brad in an effort to divert his attention so she may rescue Megan. She affirms his perfection. It makes her look good, which makes Brad fall in love with her. Following that, he brings Chelsea into his room so they can get cozy. He then leads her back to her room so she may go to sleep. Finally by me, Chelsea breaks upset and sobs involuntarily. Chelsea attempts suicide the following day by taking painkillers. This simply causes her to vomit. Megan observes that Brad continues looking at her when they are eating breakfast. The moment he mentions trying out a new VR camera, Megan offers to participate. Brad then strokes Chelsea's arm as she gets up to wipe the table. Megan notices this and accidentally knocks Chelsea over in the kitchen. This incites conflict. In order to get Megan to her room, Brad instructs Chelsea. Chelsea tells Megan that Brad is planning to kill her when they are finally alone. To support this, she displays Tina's body and says that Brad also murdered Heather. Megan, though, is so dazzled by her admiration, so she dashes downstairs and tells Brad about her. Brad becomes angry, learning that none of them are trustworthy. They are dragged back to their rooms, where he locks them. Chelsea communicates with Megan via the wall hole after Brad leaves. Her insistence on Megan still thinks Brad is innocent, but they are cooperating before they are killed. Brad tests his cameras in the basement in the meanwhile. While he is away, to release Megan, Chelsea makes her way out of Tina's chamber and goes to her house. They journey together to Brad's workplace, where Chelsea plays Heather's death. Megan recoils at what she sees as Chelsea searches the drawers for anything practical. She doesn't understand that Brad is already at the door, though. He pulls Megan back to her room abruptly. He then pulls Chelsea to the basement after tying her up. Megan sobs in the background as she hears Chelsea screaming. When she finally chooses to assist, she destroys their wall and flees through Tina's chamber. Brad is upset in the basement after understanding that everything Chelsea claimed was false. As a result, he dons his camera mask and is ready to murder her. But before he could, he gets another headache and thinks back on his history. In order to spend his entire life with Sadie, Brad murdered their mother years ago. However, Sadie shot herself to death rather than stay with him. Megan is meantime attempting to unlock a locked drawer that holds the knives in the kitchen. She takes the largest one when she is finished and heads over to Chelsea's aid. Just like Chelsea recommended the previous evening, Brad defeats Chelsea in the basement. Chelsea retaliates by hurling a rock at him. Megan jumps out of nowhere and tries to stab Brad. Nonetheless, he easily defeats her. He then hits Chelsea one more, but Megan stands up and executes a backstab on him. As Brad hits the ground, the females can beat him up. The girls steal his keys and go to the front door while he is hurt and weak. But when they attempt to open it, Brad flees and seizes Megan. Suffocating her, Brad is then struck in the face by Chelsea while wearing the camera equipment. Finally, the females unlock the door and make their way outside. There, they solicit assistance from onlookers and are eventually able to phone their family. Chelsea continues to see a therapist months later, but she is reluctant to share anything with him because rejects going over what happened to her again. Brad is Sadie's bloodied ghost follows him everywhere. Two 13-year-old girls at another location. Except to meet up with a stranger they met online, the crime wave keeps going. This is how our movie ends. Tell us in the comments how you felt about this movie recap. See you in the following movie recap.